if anyone could forget, there's another book that was put out later called Political Teachings of the Book of Esther. But that, we'll see, and as we learn it, we'll go a bunch of things. Yalla, let us finish up Nehemiah Perek Vav. We're right in the middle. We're actually going to learn Nehemiah Vav and go a little bit into Nehemiah Zayin, into chapter 7. Then we're going to break for at least a month plus for Megillat Esther. Yalla, let's take a look here. Okay, I just want to remind everyone, not everyone was here. So we started looking, Perek Vav is back to dealing with the enemies. We met Sanvelat again. We saw some interesting perushim on what exactly Sanvelat is trying to do and how he's trying to convince Nehemiah that he is on his side or not on his side to stop them from building the walls. We said this is the very end. The walls are finished, just the doors aren't in yet. So this is like the last gasp, the last attempt, the last ability, and this is really going to be the end. We're not going to meet the enemies after this. It's the last real attempt to infiltrate Yerushalayim. Okay, they know this is it. And they do it through threatening again and through trickery. They try to bring him out so they can possibly kill him, and then they say you're going to say there's a revolt. All kinds of interesting things that they're trying to do. And one of the things they said is that there are prophets, that you brought prophets who have been saying all kinds of things, like you're going to be king, and all kinds of interesting things that are going on in Yerushalayim. Nehemiah, we said, doesn't play around with these guys. He's a very, very powerful and very self-assured man. And he says, forget it, you're lying. There's nothing to do. It's not true. And we finished it in Pasuka Tet. We finished Ve'ata chazek et yadi. And we saw, I believe, 5 different perushim to that word. Those words, Ve'ata chazek et yadi. Right, from talking to Sanballat to talking to Hashem to talking to himself, all the different things. And we said most of them can happen simultaneously. In other words, they're not soter, they don't necessarily contradict each other. They could all exist at the same time. We just sort of saw how a leader has to strengthen himself. So what we're going to do is see the next half of the chapter, which is from Pasuk Yud, and there we're going to meet the aforesaid prophet, the prophet who's been saying this. We're going to meet Shemaiah. We're going to sort of have to go into exactly what he's doing and what he tries to do, and there may be a key here. Again, things I've heard from Rav Kashtiel that could be a key here to understanding another difference that is happening, another undercurrent in between Nehemiah and Am Yisrael at the time. And I think it's a fascinating idea to see in our time also. Okay, so let's read just the first couple psukim, because we only need from 10 to 13, just 10 to 13 now.
And then I came to the home of Shemaiah, son of Daliah, son of Mehatabel, who was confined indoors. He said, let us meet at the temple of God, inside the sanctuary, and let us close the sanctuary doors, for they are coming to kill you. Tonight they are coming to kill you. But I said, can a man like me run away? And who, being like me, may enter the sanctuary and live? I will not come. Then I realized that, behold, God had not sent him, for he had spoken as if it was a prophecy for me. Rather, Tobiah or Sanballat had hired him. It was because he was a hireling, so that I would be frightened, comply, and sin, so that they would have a scandal with which to humiliate me.
Okay, so let's start there. First of all, everyone here in Nehemiah, in the book of Nehemiah here, we've been on this journey. What is this? This is our 9th lesson in Nehemiah already. We see the word Yechelfuni, right? He will humiliate me. We know that's the key word in Nehemiah, right? Nehemiah is fighting the humiliation of Am Yisrael all the time. That word is a key word that happens all the time, and whenever we see it, we have to see, there is a ikroni, there's a important something happening here. In other words, that is always a basis for action. When Nehemiah has a fear of Yecharfuni, it's not a personal fear usually. He's not only saying, you're going to be mezalzel bi, you're going to be derogatory to me, you're not going to be nice to me. No. He has a picture of Am Yisrael. Am Yisrael cannot be put down. He's not willing to accept that. But that's I'm just saying the last word is Yechelfuni here. But now let's try to take a look. So if you guys have the pages, it's on the second page. The whole thing here is on the second page. The story seems to like this. Let's just on the basic overview, obviously, before we go into the minutia of the commentaries, we start to explain it a little differently. Nehemiah goes, it seems by choice, to the house of Shmaya ben Zaya ben Metavel. We don't really know who he is at the moment. Okay, he goes to this guy's house, and he's Atzur. What Atzur is not clear. We'll take a look at him. He's like under house arrest. That's what Atzur nowadays would mean. Atzur means stopped. It's not exactly clear. It's a strange term. The Chag of Shavuot is called Atzeret, right, or Shmini Atzeret, right? And Atzeret is a place where a lot of people come together. And Chazal asked the question what Atzeret means in the Torah itself. What is that word? Atzur is to stop. It's to gather. Anyway, but this guy is Atzur, whatever that means. And he says to me, let us meet in the house of Hashem, inside, El Tocha Heichal, and let us close the doors of the Heichal. An interesting idea, right? It's actually, when you think about it, in Nehemiah, we haven't seen Beit Hashem so often. Think about it for a minute. Right, Ezra, Beit Hashem. Vadai, before Ezra, the whole purpose was building Beit Hashem. Chagai, Zcharia, Beit Hashem, Beit Hashem, Beit Hashem. With Nehemiah, they're building Yerushalayim. Beit Hashem is not really in play. We maybe mentioned it, maybe said something about it. Really not in play. It's very interesting how much the focus of the Aliyah was Beit Hashem, but Nehemiah's focus really is not on Beit Hashem at all.
It's already been built. Not his problem.
But they don't even mention it, right? It's like saying, could you imagine the 2 days going by here if Beit HaMikdash was built without it being mentioned in the news, without it being mentioned in the stories? So you could. So maybe it is. Maybe this.
It doesn't get mentioned every day.
So Shua is saying, listen, it's there, it's working, and so it's not the point, it's not the issue. But it's just interesting to think, and I think it's going to come up here also because it's an interesting thing he says to him. He says, "Come with me. Let's go into Beit HaMikdash and close the doors." Remind you that it has doors. Remember how the chapter began?
Talking about doors.
The chapter began that the walls were built, but there are no doors. Remember, that's how it is. There are no doors yet. And here there are doors. Just interesting, it rings, right? We talked about doors, again doors, but here there are doors, Dafka. Okay? And then he says, they're coming to kill you. Not only are they coming to kill you, they're coming to kill you tonight. Now, how does he know this? Is it prophetic? Is it intelligence? Is it a rumor? Who is this guy? And how does he know this? And why does he say, come, let's go into Beit HaMikdash?
Especially if he's under house arrest, how does he know it?
Right, and especially, wait, what's going on here? So just the pshat, just the wording here is not clear. Now, the story makes sense, but you're like, what's going on? It's like parts of a story. And Nehemiah's reaction is even more surprising. Nehemiah says, will someone like me will run away? Will retreat? Will hide? And who like me can come into Beit HaMikdash and live? Why can't you go into Beit HaMikdash and live? Because he's not a Kohen. So now you go back and you say, 1 second, what was the guy talking about? What was he thinking, Shmaya, when he called Nehemiah to go into the Mikdash? I mean, Nehemiah, every one of you, if I would have said to you guys, come on in the Mikdash, you would say, we can't go in, we're not going in. What was he trying to say? What, he didn't think Nehemiah would say, no, I can't go in? What was going on here? What was his authority, Bichlal, to invite Nehemiah into the Mikdash? Okay, maybe that we're going to be. That's one way. Pikuach nefesh. What would be the other? What would be the other thing? What would be the other kivun? Maybe that he could bring him in.
Trick.
Well,
he can go in.
Maybe a prophet can say something that's a horat shah. It's called a horat shah. Is they could sometimes tell someone to do an avera, if it's a one-time thing.
Like with Dvorah.
Yael.
Well, Yael as well, but Dvorah in the sense that there's an opinion she was judging, and even though woman's not allowed to be a judge, in her case specifically, it was a one-time permission.
Okay, I mean, usually the example of Horat Shah is Eliyahu Navi on Har Carmel, who brings the Korban outside the Mikdash. That's usually the example of Horat Shah, but he's a prophet, and he can do it. So possibly, okay, either as Ariel was saying, this is Pikuach Nefesh, and therefore you can do that, or it's a prophetic statement. Whatever it is, he says no. Yeah.
You don't need to go off topic, but when David HaMelech launched the Milchemet Reshut on the northern parts before he finished conquering the 7 Canaanite nations, and he did it without the permission of the Sanhedrin, is that Horat Shah?
I don't know enough to answer that question. I think the Masechet Sanhedrin deals with this question. I don't know enough to say. David HaMelech, the kibush.
Without finishing conquering the 7 Canaanite nations.
I'm trying to think if David Bichlal dealt with capturing the nations. I'm not sure he did, and I'm not sure it's brought against him either.
Which is weird. I never understood.
I think because at that point, if I understood correctly, I'm not sure what I'm saying, but I believe at that point it was already a mute point. In other words, the nations were either intermarried, they didn't exist, right? They didn't have their own atzmiyut. They were not. There was nothing more to do with them. They were already part of the mamlacha, part of the empire. Whether that's okay or not okay, it wasn't the same thing. There was no one to fight against, in a sense. So I believe at that point in history already. The Kutit come later. The Kutit come after Ashur brings them back. That's way later, after David's time. So so he says Va'akira. Right? What someone like me will be afraid, will run away. That seems to be not a statement of a religious statement about the Mikdash. It's a statement of, hey, I'm in charge here. I have a persona. I represent Am Yisrael here. You think someone like me could run away? I'm not afraid. I am staying wherever I am. I'm not running away to Beit HaMikdash. That was one thing. Umi kamoni asher avo elcha v'chai lo avo. I'm not coming. Right, so there's some kind of tension here between the two of them, right? There's a tension here. Since we're not sure who Shmaya is and what his intentions are exactly, we just seen it by Nehemiah's reaction, and we know Nehemiah to be the hero here in that sense, that something's going on between the two of them, not good. It also fits into the parak, right? That people are always trying to trip him up. Everyone's trying to trip up Nehemiah, trying to trick him in. So this guy apparently is part of that trickery. And then he goes, and he says, Nehemiah says in verse 12, Va'akira, and I recognized, V'nei lo Elohim shelacho. God did not send him, which brings us back to the prophetic part, right? God did not send him. Ki hanivua diber alai, which is a very cryptic statement. We're going to have to see what that means. The prophecy spoke to me, spoke about me. We have to see exactly what that means. V'tuvia v'sanvelat sacharo. But what you can end up is, I see that Tuvia and Sanvelat, the enemies, they hired this guy. This guy is a hired gun. He is not doing this b'tmimut. He's not doing this piously. What?
This guy, I don't understand. Where did he get the money? Where is he getting this information?
Who, Sanvelat?
No, the guy he goes to.
Shmaya. Well, Shmaya was hired.
Right, but he's also in house arrest.
Well, we're going to see what Atzur.
How was he hired?
You're going to see Atzur is not house arrest by most of the people here. We'll see that in a minute.
The translation says confined indoors.
You'll see what that means by the other Perushim in a minute, okay? But Nehemiah feels he understands that this guy is not good. There's something going on here. And then he goes into Yud Gimel, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Leman sachuhu. in order to be, or in order that he is hired, leman ira, so that I will be afraid, and I will do as he says, and I will sin. And this will be for them, l'shem ra, this will be a bad name, so that they can humiliate me. So this is the pshat of what happens. Now let's try to break this down, okay? We're going to break it down first into different perushim, just on what's happening exactly. And then I want to offer another perush, which I think is really, really interesting in this picture. So let's start at the beginning of our page, okay? The Malbim. V'ani bati beit Shmaya. מאז שמה ליבו לחקור על הנבואה שניבא שמעיה עליו, שיהיה מלך ביהודה, והלך לביתו לחגור ולדרוש על הדבר. Now Malbim says, listen, like Sanvelat said, there really was a prophet who was saying Nehemiah would be king. It's not fake, there really was a prophet. This guy, Shmaya, was actually prophesizing this. And Nehemiah wants to go to him to just, figure out what's going on here. Maybe it's true. He doesn't say he's not a prophet. He seems to respect him. He wants to go. According to the Malbim, he's going to get down to the bottom of this. What exactly is going on here? Okay? That's the way the Malbim understands Bichlal, what he's doing with him. Why is Nehemiah coming to Shmaya? While the Ramat Valley says something even greater. He says...
sorry to disturb.
Yeah.
So I thought Shemaiah came to Nehemiah instead.
It says Nehemiah comes here, look. V'ani bati beit Shmaya. I came to the house of Shmaya. Nehemiah, as always, is proactive, right? Nehemiah always is the one who is the first one out. He usually doesn't wait for things to happen. If something's going on, he's there. So he's going out to this guy. So according to the Malbim, because he's suspicious. He doesn't know what's going on here, and he wants to be first person meeting this guy who's putting out these rumors that he's supposed to be king. Yeah.
If we could back up, it's a question. I know it's not here, but wouldn't the obvious first question be, or something to clarify? Who told you? What's your nevuah? Why are you saying that I should be king? But it's missing here.
Well, that may be what he's going to check out here. This is what he wants to find out. According to the Malbim, that's what it seems to be.
We jumped
He never got the chance. Perhaps he walked through the door. He said, Nehemiah, just the man I was thinking.
Right. We jumped this. Oh, you come meet me over here. Let's go here. Wait. The first question should be, why are you saying this? What's your source? What's this?
Unless he understood that he's a prophet. Unless that was clear. That was clear. That's what it seemed. According to the Malbim, that's what it seems to be.
I know we discussed this last time, but wouldn't it have been clear to Nehemiah that there is no prophecy?
So we talked about that, right? So apparently it's not. I mean, that doesn't come up here. Oh, how are you prophesizing? There's no more prophecy. It doesn't. No. Now again, when we said, even all the shiurim, when we talked about the ma'avar, the change from with prophecy to without prophecy, it wasn't right. It was a gradual kind of movement. That's what it seems to be.
And also, we don't use the word nevuah here.
Right. Even though, right, he says, "V'akira v'inei lo Elohim shelacho." God didn't send him in verse 12. Where it seems to be there's some kind of something God.
So he could still say this might be a prophet, but at least in this instance,
correct.
It's not verified.
That's what it seems to be. Again, according to Malbim, the Ramat Valley says in a different way. If you guys look at the next source here, "V'omnam nefi she'aya sham b'Yerushalayim adam kasher v'chacham sheruach nevuah shora alav." So he says even more so. In other words, Shmaya may not bichlal have been saying anything. Nehemiah knows that this guy is a highly respectable man, right? Chacham, kasher v'chacham. That the spirit of prophecy usually is on him. Lefichach hatirshata Nehemiah chashav lelech etzlo lirot ma b'fiv gam hu. Because he's hearing all these horrible rumors. Oh, this is happening. They're saying you're going to be king, and he says, "Listen, I have to find someone to talk to here." Someone who's a serious guy, who I can hear. If he heard maybe something else, if he can help me out here. Because the Ramat Valley picks this guy Shmaya up to even a higher level. As opposed to the Malbim, who seems to be saying that this guy is off. But he didn't know that yet, Nehemiah. Now he's going to find out. The Malbim says that first Nehemiah saw him as a wise man. Someone he really wants to go and talk to him. Okay? He's going to ask him what he should do. כי לא רצה לסמוך על עצמו לגמרי, שומע לעצה חכם. He didn't want to just trust himself, even though Nehemiah has no problem trusting himself. We've seen this very often. But in this point, he's saying, you know what, maybe I'm missing something. Which is, again, the greatness of a man to be able to say that statement. Listen, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here. I'm going to lead the answer, right? He says, Shomea le'etzah chacham. He who listens to advice is a wise man. So Nehemiah is going, whatever the direction is, he's going to this guy, both according to the Malbim and the Ramad's Valley, seems to with an open mind in that sense. He's not coming to beat him up. He's not coming to attack him. He's not coming to accuse him. He's coming to listen to what he has to say. Either, really, is this true? All these prophecies you're saying about me being king? Or just, help me out here. All right, so he comes. Now, Atzur. So you guys see there are 5 different Perushim for the word Atzur. All right, Shua, we have 5 different Perushim, what the word Atzur means. Let's just read them quickly, okay? So the Dat Mikra says, Sagur bebeito mitboded. He is enclosed in his house, mitboded. Help me out? What the Breslovers do. He's silently communing with Hashem. Mitboded here means he is meditating, he's separating himself from people so that he can focus only on Hashem. Isolating himself. The Malbim says, V'chole, v'lo yachol likro oto elav. He was sick. Atzur is he was sick, and that's why Nehemiah goes to him, as opposed to what you would expect, Nehemiah being the pecha, being the leader, that he would call whoever he needs to talk to him. In this case, he can't, because the guy is sick. That's why he goes to him. Very, very mundane explanation, right, in this sense. Saying, listen, really, he would have called him over, but in this case, he can't. The Mitzudat David says, Haya me'ukav lashevet babayit. He had to remain at home. Why he had to remain at home, he doesn't explain. Here we could go with Shua's direction. Maybe he did something wrong. He was under house arrest. We're not exactly sure what it is. And it's possibly, it could have been though, that Nehemiah had him Atzur. So Nehemiah, because of these rumors flying around and some possibly what he was saying, Nehemiah wanted him there. He didn't want him to go out. If you can remember, Adam, it's that David said, what the Nevuah, it was the mouthpiece, right? The person saying things. It wasn't a prophet. Maybe he wanted him, quiet. He wanted him quiet. He wanted him to have him give him access to the community, to the public. He wants him to stay in one place. The Ibn Ezra.
Or just so he knows where to find him.
Possibly, right? Possibly we would do that, right? The Ibn Ezra says, Atzur lifnei haboro le'ovdo. He was stopped before Hashem to serve him. כי עוצר עצמו מהנאה, ועצור בתענית, כדואג האדומי שהיה נעצר. Interesting why he brings דואג האדומי is a problem in itself. But he says he stops himself from pleasures. It's a spiritual atzur. He is a man, and Nehemiah defines him, he's a man who controls his physical desires. He is in a fast. He is trying to commune with Hashem.
Why did he take money from this guy?
Oh, that's a great question.
It seemed to really flow with that kind of character trait.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll talk about that as we go on. So unfortunately, there are things to talk about. The Ramad Valley says, Yesh lavino b'shtei panim. There are 2 ways that we can understand what the word atzur means. The first one, he was at home learning. That's what he did. He was at home. He's not going anywhere. And the second one is atzur miruach hanevuah. The prophecy was denied to him. He was blocked. Atzur is like atzar, was stopped. The prophecy was blocked. Shnistalka me'alav mipnei kilkulo shenata achar hashochad. His prophecy was gone. He was a real prophet. But now, he's blocked. That's what he would say, because he started receiving bribes to scare the Chacham, Lev, Tzadik, V'chinam, V'hu milshon, V'atzar et hashamayim v'lo yemetar. Just a second, just like we say in Vayayim Shamua, will stop the sky from giving from giving water, like we say in Shema, V'atzar et hashamayim. So here's Atzur, in that he's blocked off from heaven. Yeah.
So Nehemiah stopped getting Nevuarim, because Nevuot, how you said, because he
Shmaya stopped getting.
Shemaiah.
Shmaya, this guy, yeah. Shmaya is Atzur. Shmaya is not getting any.
He stopped getting prophecies because he got bribes from
Right. From Sanballat, from the enemies.
From the bad guys.
Right, the bad guys. I'm just saying, in this case, if that's the right reading, the Ramat Valley, who's different than the others, if that is correct, then Nehemiah at this point is already suspicious. At this point, Nehemiah is already, when he says V'hu Atzur, he is already either giving us a prior, seeing from the future back. In other words, he's telling us, the readers, you should know that this guy's already been blocked off prophecy, or possibly already at that time, he's already very, very suspicious. As opposed to the Malbim and the Ramat Valley, you said he's really coming to him to hear what he wants to say. This Perush may already hint that he was already a little suspicious. Yeah.
Can we say the prophecy was stopped also means that at that point of time prophecy was no longer there anymore?
It doesn't seem to be what the Ramat Valley is saying. It doesn't seem. It seems that this guy lost it because he was taking bribes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a general statement. Yeah. Tov. Okay, so this is the beginning. This is all the akdama. This is all the prologue to this story. All right, but it already brings us into different feel of who the Shmaya guy, maybe possibly a great prophet, right? Who's alone, communing with Hashem all by himself in his house, doesn't want to be bothered by other people. To this last Perush the Ramat Valley, that this guy is already done. He's cut off before with Hashem because he's taking bribes. So let's take a look here. What exactly does Shmaya say to Nehemiah? What does he want to do? And let's take a look at Rashi. Okay, you have Rashi here, the English. Okay, and he said, "Let us meet." Shmaya was a false prophet who had received a bribe from Sanballat and his colleagues to frighten Nehemiah in order to stop the work. Okay, Rashi cuts straight to the chase. This is the story. Okay. And when he says, "For they are coming to assassinate you, for Sanballat and his colleagues will come to assassinate, and tonight they are coming. Therefore, he warned him to enter the temple and close the doors about himself, because the doors of the gates of the city had not been made. So you can't hide in the city. There's no safe place in the city. The only safe place in Yerushalayim at the moment is the temple." Right? Also, until that time, they had not erected the doors to the gates. That's the beginning of the chapter. And Nehemiah answers, "I will not enter. I will not enter there because of fear of death, and I will not transgress the commandments of the Holy One, blessed he, that a non-Kohen may not enter his temple. So that they should not have this for a scandal, in order that they should have this as a scandal to reproach me with this sin." What is Rashi saying here? Rashi's saying this was a trap. It was a trap for a scandal. Yeah.
So only Kohanim specifically can enter the temple.
Okay.
How does Am Yisrael come into the temple too?
They don't. They don't go into the temple itself. They go to the courtyard.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm talking into the building itself. Some who can go into the building? And it's fascinating. People have to fix the mikdash. The workers, the artsmen who have to fix the Beit HaMikdash was the building. You had to fix a window. You had to fix a pipe. They would go in. It's very interesting. Even to the Kodesh Kodeshim, they had to. There, they say they would lower them in with like they wouldn't touch and they wouldn't see. They bring them like from the side. It's very interesting. But artisans could go into the mikdash. It's sort of interesting to think. Always remember the mikdash, even though it was holy of holy, it was a building, and it needed to be dealt with in a building.
Couldn't find a Kohen who was an electrician?
If they could, but you didn't have to, because if there was a better electrician, you would have taken.
There's interesting machloket in Masechet Brachot where it's where do you face, and it talks about Kodesh HaKodeshim. If you're in the
where do you face the daven?
Where do you face it?
Right. And then
how could somebody daven inside the Kodesh HaKodeshim?
Well, it only happened once a year, right? They couldn't get that, but yeah.
So Kohanim, Leviim, and helpers can enter the.
Leviim don't go in either.
Leviim though?
Only Kohanim. being a Levi, it's very. I'm sorry, but it's no. I can't.
So there's like the guards.
Yeah, right. They're the guards. We're gonna meet the Levium here at the end of the chapter.
So Kohanim and
Just the Kohanim. Just the Kohanim go in.
Who are the artisans? Who are these artisans?
Well, artisans are whoever, but they don't go in all the time if they have to fix something.
They go Kohanim regularly, and sometimes artisans will help fix stuff.
Right. It's just interesting to think of that. In other words, it's like a trick answer what I just said now. It's not like they don't go in. They're not allowed to go in. But really, they actually did. So when they had to. It's just interesting. So let's get back here. Sorry. So what did he want to happen here? He wanted there to have a scandal. Nehemiah went into the Mikdash. Ooh, guess what's happening? What does that mean?
He wants to be king.
He wants to be king, or he wants to be Kohen Gadol, and there is a national trauma of a king who went into the Mikdash. Do we know this story?
No.
Uzziah.
He got.
I think we talked about it here.
And how to live in the cemetery.
That's right. Very good. Not in the cemetery. In the whatever. In the. This is Uzziah. Uzziah or Azariah, according to different readings. This king, who was actually considered a good king, he was a good king. He was considered a good king, and he, at some point, it went to his head, and he thought he could perform like a priest. And he comes in, and it's like a very dramatic moment. He's standing there with the Ketoret, with incense, and the Kohen Gadol stands there, and he's like, you shall not pass thing. So he stands there and says, no, you can't come in. You're not there. And he's like, it's a face-off. And he's about to go in, and boom, he gets tzarat. Like right there. The guy gets tzarat, gets leprosy. It's not really leprosy, it's tzarat. And it ends right there. They grab him, shoot him out of there, and that's it. And he's gone. He's off the stage of history. And his son, Yotam, takes over. But his name was Uzziah.
Outside of the graves of the normal kings?
He's out, and it says Bet HaChaim. It's not.
I remember there was one king that was not together with the other of the graves of the kings.
So he wasn't buried there with the other ones? I'm not sure. I don't remember. It maybe. I don't know. I think Achaz isn't buried with them. They say he's not buried. Achaz.
One king was not buried together with other kings.
I think that's Achaz. I think that's Chizkiyahu's father. It's a couple later kids. But it's actually his grandson. It was Uzziah's grandson. Yeah. Chizkiyahu? He's buried with the kings. I think so. Well, whatever. Very good. Oh, yafeh me'od. Nachon. It brings, in other words, this mixing up of king, who's could work in the mikdash, who's there. It's not pashut. As Ariel says, mamash by Cheni, the Kohanim are kings. That's what's happening in the Cheshbonim, and here a king, sort of, or the leader is going into the mikdash. It's not good. And according to Rashi, it was a trick to bring him in. Now, they wanted to make this into a scandal. This is really what they were trying to do. Okay? So it should have Ramash as a scandal to reproach me with this sin. They would say, you went into the Mikdash. What's going on here? Lo beseder. Right? So Uzziah. Yeah.
Was that your Rish?
No. The gun shooting.
I got it.
No, I did too. I'm just teasing.
And the Malbim adds here, if you guys see the Malbim here, he says they'll get two things they'll get if he goes in. First of all, he'll be punished by God. It's not only to make a scandal, it's really an Isur. It's a serious Isur to go in there. And he was trying to trip him up. Just like someone would... What? Right, exactly. God will hurt him. The people, it's a double win. Right? It's a win-win for them. He both gets trouble with Hashem and right? Now, says the Malbim. So how did he know? Right? How did he know? He says, no, I'm not going in, right? I'm not going to go. How did he know? So the Malbim says, the Mitzvah David here, I have if you guys look, and there's a big thing No, let's start with the Malbim. The Malbim in the beginning. Va'akira. Umizei karti. It's the beginning of the Malbim. Ki lo Elohim shelocho. רצוני לומר שהוא נביא שקר. כי הנבואה דיבר עליי. שהוא אשר דיבר עליי את הנבואה האמורה למעלה שיהיה מלך על ישראל. ואז הייתי מסתפק אולי נבואה אמיתית. ועתה הכרתי כי לא אלוהים שלחו. רק טוביה וסנבלת שכרו. I'm sorry, I'm reading it down, I'm going to translate it. שהם שכרו אותו בין על הנבואה שינבא שיהיה מלך על ישראל, בין על העצה שיעץ לי להיכנס אל ההיכל. וזה הכירתם מפני שהעצה שיעץ לו עתה סותרת אל הנבואה שניבא עליו קודם. שאם השם דיבר שיהיה מלך על ישראל, איך יוכל אויביו להורגו? עד שיתחבא בפני מלך ההיכל. בהפך היה לו לומר, אל תירא, כי דבר השם לא ישוב ריקם, ומלוך תמלוך, ומזה הכיר שלא השם שלחו. So Nehemiah, the Malbim here says that he has a double understanding here. He comes to the, right, remember the Malbim said he's coming to really understand if he's the prophet who's been saying this. And he comes in, and this guy says to him, go in and hide. And he says, no. Then you're lying. Why are you lying? Because if I'm a king, if I'm going to be a king, then why should I hide? A king doesn't hide. And therefore, you can't say one and the other at the same time. You can't do these things. What? I hear it. This is his reading here. This is he's saying, one second, if your whole point of me being a king and being powerful and strong, then why are you saying I'm hiding? Apparently you're lying. He understands through the two things that he said that he's lying. This is the way the Malbim understands. And he understands that he's been doubly, in other words, both this thing that he said now to go in and what he said before to be king, both are from Sanvelat. Both of these. Yeah, Malti.
But David the Melech was hiding one time, and one time was in the tent when Boik was spying him.
There he wasn't hiding when he came to Nov, but he does hide out with Shmuel. It's true, with the prophet himself.
But he was taking the skirt of Goliath.
Right.
There was one time he was the meat was getting showing.
No, but he wasn't king then. That doesn't count.
So David, you have to remember, he was on his way to being king. And as a king hiding when he's already king.
He was hiding when he was king.
David?
Or he was running away at least.
Yeah. Well, Shaul was trying to kill him, but Shaul was the king.
No. He was still running away.
Oh, when Avshalom comes to get him. Right, that's true. That's also, it's different, but it's true.
He was more strategic.
It's interesting. It's interesting. Whatever it is, it definitely doesn't play into Nehemiah's vision of a king. Okay, it's clear according to the Malbim that it doesn't play into that. So that's his reading. The Mitzudat David says otherwise. Let's take a look here. The Mitzudat David is right. It's right the paragraph after that. Va'akirei karti bo shelo shelocho Hashem. V'tzono lomar en atzato be'emunah k'mitzvat Hashem. I told that this isn't from Hashem. כי הנבואה, כי אמר אשר הנבואה דיבר עליי ללכת אל ההיכל. והנה הרבה ריווח והצלה לפניו. Now the Bible says something really interesting. He says, Hashem has many ways to save me. Says Nehemiah. There are many ways he could have come to save me. He's going to tell me to go into a place. So look what he says. He brings out Ariel. He says what he says. אם כן יצווה לעבור, ומדוע אם כן יצווה לעבור מצוותו? Why would he say to do an Avera? If he would have said it on his own, if Shmaya would have given this Eitzah just as a friend, I could listen to him, Pikuach Nefesh. And then I could have heard, you know what, Pikuach Nefesh, maybe you're right, maybe I can do it. It can't be coming from Hashem. This is what the Mitzudat David says. Interesting. It's an interesting statement.
Look right at the Akedah. Already.
So you're saying things could happen that you would not expect.
That's what I expected. Mamash Avera to go and sacrifice his son. So
this is
deeply into it.
Before Matan Torah. It was before Matan Torah. In other words, it's after Matan Torah, Hashem says specifically to go do an Avera. Very, very rare kind of thing. So Nehemiah is thinking this out. The Malbim is trying to understand. The Mitzudat David is trying to explain how he figured this out and why he doesn't believe. So he says, interesting. Again, he relates to what Ariel said, that if he would have just said, you know what, you're in danger, go hide. Pikuach nefesh, that would have worked. That would have been fine. But if already, Nehemiah says, Hashem is making the effort to let me know I'm in danger, there are better ways, there are other ways to save me. He says that, right? Many ways before Hashem. Right? And does he say it again? There are many ways for Hashem to save me. And now he knew it's not true and that he's trying to hurt me. So this is, okay, we had, again, Rashi, Malbim, Mitzudot, who are explaining how he knew and what they were attempting to do. But I want to bring another kivun, which I think is brings us a lot deeper into what's happening here in Yerushalayim. There's a juxtaposition here, or a what we said, and that was mentioned here, that Rashi hints to, between the Mikdash and the city. Nehemiah, when he returns to Israel, and this is a greater view of what's happening, Nehemiah isn't satisfied with having a temple on its own. It's very interesting when you think about it. The people up until that point don't seem to be exerting themselves to form a national.
Well, they're not allowed to.
They don't. It doesn't seem to concern them either. They're both not allowed to. It doesn't concern them. It wasn't what they went up to do. If we wouldn't have the book of Nehemiah, we would have ended with Ezra bringing Torah rule to Eretz Yisrael. And that would have been great. That would have been wonderful. We have a Torah community. Nehemiah is coming with some really interesting ideas here. Independence, rule, army, defense. Whoa, what are these terms here? What's going on here? I want to offer that many people in Am Yisrael were not so happy about Nehemiah's motions. Yeah, Hirsch.
So Nehemiah didn't want just like the Beit HaMikdash. He also wanted a national framework.
Exactly. This is what I'm saying, and this is what I'm going to try to explain.
Was this in Hedron at this point, right? No.
We don't, not in the regular terms. We know. I mean, Ezra is there and Sheikh Knesset Agdolah. This is their time. How much it was a fully functioning Sanhedrin, I don't know. Ezra's alive. We're going to meet Ezra in a second. Yeah. What? There's a mikdash. There's a mikdash that works. Yeah. There are chachamim. I imagine Ezra's around. Ezra's here at this point. He's there in Yerushalayim. He's the religious leader. Okay. You have to go back in time and sort of think what Eretz Yisrael looked like. Eretz Yisrael was a religious community. That's what it was. It was focused on the temple. It was focused on doing the Torah and learning the laws. Right. This is Jewish life there. No power whatsoever on a political level.
But aren't we only 70 years out of an army and a political?
We are. We are. We're more than 70.
Only 70-ish. Right?
So it depends how we learn it. We're around 100 years after. We're around 100 years after. Now 100 years in antiquity is a really long time. Okay? It's a really long time because you don't have the same memory. There are things that don't exist. In other words, you don't have writing, you don't have pictures, you don't have things. These people have been taken to Bavel, brought back to Israel. This is very, very difficult. Now, you have the dreams. You have the dreams. You have the hopes. We have Am Yisrael wanting to return. The fact that they returned is a miracle in itself. We suck. Not all of them returned either. Not even most of them returned. But they're here. And Nehemiah comes, and what bothered him from the very beginning, if you guys remember, were the walls of Yerushalayim. Nehemiah says, exactly, that's what brings him back. And Nehemiah, what seems to be sitting on him, what seems to be bothering him, Yoshev Alav, sitting on him, is a great, I just translate something which is, I don't think that, there's no word sitting on him in English, right?
weighing his mind.
Weighing on his mind. Thank you. Weighing on him. Thank you. That's the word. Right. Is not the Mikdash. The Mikdash works. He wants more. He wants Am Yisrael to have, not be humiliated. That word, that chilpa. Shelo niyeh lechilpa.
So he's like Trump. He wants to make Israel great again.
That's right. He did. That's right. He wants to make Israel great again. But he says there's an argument with him. And the argument goes, the greatness of Israel is through its religion. The greatness of Israel is through the Mikdash. We are not like all the other nations. We don't need walls. We don't need an army. We will serve Hashem. We will be like Kohanim. Mamlechet Kohanim v'Goy Kadosh.
Yeah, if you don't have a wall to protect your Mikdash, it's pardon my language, it's a stupid Mikdash. It's just going to come in, they're going to come, and they're going to burn it down again.
Or they'll say, or what will they say? Will be so true and so great that the light will pour out to the people and everyone will learn the Gedulah of
That's
Hashem.
clearly not what happened.
It's not what happened yet. Savlanut.
Still not happening.
No, I'm just saying this Tana. By the way, I hope everyone hears the overtones I'm saying right now. There are direct overtones to right now. Sit. I remember many years ago I was in a Haredi yeshiva talking to guys, and they said this Chad Mashmait. They said to me, I said, how could we survive without an army, without a thing? What are you talking about? How you wouldn't be here? They said, brought me Rashi and Im Bechukotai Telechu, and if you go by my laws, everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. It is a religious statement. It's not, for those of us in the world, it seems like ridiculous, but there is a power to this religious statement. It's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai who says we should all sit and learn Torah. This is a huge machloket between Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Rabbi Ishmael, a very important one, of whether we should be working or not. Should we be working? And they say to him, what are you talking about? We have to work. He says, no. We learn Torah and the nations will do the work. That is...
No.
Okay.
But labor was get a job done.
1 second. No.
Good job, Hirsch.
No, 1 second. Excuse me. Learning Torah, the level Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is talking about, is not easy. Don't make a mistake that we're talking. 1 second.
Donors?
Hashem provides.
Actually,
One second. You guys are no. This is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. It's straight the nafkamina what he's saying, because the Gemara right there says to him. The Gemara says.
But if everyone sat and learned Torah and kept every mitzvah, that would probably work.
Okay.
It says if everyone kept, if all of Am Yisrael kept Shabbos even one time, Meshach ben David would be here.
Okay.
So
you
everyone should learn Torah and keep
good.
Meshach ben David would be here.
That's.
But it's not.
Wait, is that the matara? Is that really? Is it? I would even ask the question: is that even the really what Hashem wants from everyone? No. To just sit and learn Torah?
But we can't have answers. Don't forget, these people who are giving these answers are learned for hundreds of years cumulatively, right? It's not. I think this now.
Cumulatively, I'm learning for thousands.
I read a little bit.
I hear what you're saying.
So we have to do that.
I disagree with him.
1 second. Rabbi Ishmael disagrees with Rabbi.
They're only sponges.
Rabbi Ishmael disagrees with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and he says that he asks the same question. He says, if they only sit and learn Torah, how are they going to eat?
Rabbi Shimon's always talking Panini.
What? Rabbi Shimon has premiums. And then they say, 1 second, Asher, just when this finishes this thought, and then the Gemara there says, Rabbi Masu, Kmo Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, velo ala bi'adam. Many did like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and it wasn't successful. And many did like Rabbi Ishmael and they were successful. It's not exactly a psak. The Gemara doesn't say what's right and what's wrong. Possibly what's the ideal and what's the practical.
He says all day, or he says everyone should learn Torah. He says everyone should learn.
I don't remember the direct quote, but yeah, pretty much.
Everyone should learn what?
Everyone. That's what they should do.
But it says, if you're fulfilling your duty, if you learn a little bit of Torah in the morning, a little bit at night. That's enough. That's not good enough for Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That's what he says. He says that's not what we should be doing. We should be learning. That's what he says.
We should be learning all the time. He was one of the dugmat of Toratam Umanuta. He was the dugma. Yeah.
We're learning Ayin Aya from Rav Kook, and Rav Kook states something which really, kind of inspired me. It makes sense for me. What it says is, it comes from Mechael where we talk about why should we face Eretz Israel, and where someone in Eretz Israel, why should he face it towards Jerusalem, and person in Jerusalem, why should he face to the Beit HaMikdash?
Okay.
So it comes from this pasuk, and he says we should always remember that Eretz Israel is not the goal of our Israel. The goal is something Kodesh, which is something divine, but Eretz Israel is the means, the tool to go from that point to the point that where we are longing for, where we are targeting our spiritually. So likewise, I understand with due respect, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, he meant the Kodesh, something which is divine. But at the same time, we have to realize the thing that's happening in this world is not stop. Hashem will not create something just for the sake of creating, just for fun. He will never do that. Everything he created, even the worst thing, the most negative thing in this world, has a deep meaning in it. So for that reason, why we say a person who is a Rasha has something, a good neshama himself. So once he do tshuva, he can come back to the original form. It does not. The tshuva explanation is he comes back to the original form, what he was actually. So that means parnasa, job, doing things. That is not the motive or the goal of a human or a Klal Israel. It's just a means, a tool to get to the point of divinity.
Okay, so first of all, what you're saying is really important. It's very important. I think it's also the heart of what's happening here in this discussion. But we're going to see Nehemiah. He doesn't give up on the Kodesh. Nehemiah isn't only focused on the walls. What he's trying to do in depth, and we'll see this later, and we'll see. We'll see it today. Even I hope, as Hashem, we have to get to there. He's going to try to bring the Mikdash out, as opposed to what this guy Shmaya is doing, where he says, Nehemiah, close it down. There are no gates to the city. The gates are in the Mikdash. Go into the city. Go into the Mikdash. Close the gates. I'm not talking metaphorically, but not only. Go into the Mikdash and close the gates. That's what he's telling him. Stay there. That's where we are. That's where Am Yisrael is. We are not the gates of the city. We're the Mikdash. That's what we are. But Torah. That's what Nehemiah is going to say. Nehemiah is going to say, no. You think the Mikdash is its own yichida that stays there and we all go into there? No. The power of the Mikdash is to be able to spread the Kedusha out to the world. This is what Nehemiah is doing. Nehemiah is going to use the Kodesh, and he says the Kodesh spreads out. All the political maneuvering, you think this is Chol? It's not Chol, it's Kodesh. Our army, you think is Chol? It's not Chol, it's Kodesh. I'm saying about almost a flip of what you said there, Asher, okay? But it's using the same idea. In other words, everything is used for the Kodesh, and then the Kodesh is used for everything. That's the statement. In other words, of course you need a heart. Of course you need something which is sanctified, which is godly. But that godliness comes out. And now I want to give another perush on he's atzur. Shmaya's atzur, he's closed up, Shmaya. He's not closed-minded as much as his spiritual energy is this way. It's mufne pnima, it's internal. Nehemiah's whole spiritual energy is out. That is what he is. That's his power. In other words, again, remember, he's a super religious Nehemiah. He's not chiloni. He's not searching to, but he understands that the koach in the Mikdash isn't to remain in the Mikdash. The idea, and this is a fascinating statement, it says in Vayikra, it says, V'yitalachti betochachem. At the very end of the brachot of Vayikra, when he talks about the great stage of what we're expecting, it says, V'talachti betochechem. And there's a machloket there. If V'talachti betochechem means I will also be in the mikdash, or even greater than that. Hashem will be present, in a sense, everywhere. The mikdash is just the focal point of where he goes out from. That, I think, is Nehemiah's statement. In other words, this is a big machloket on, can a state be sanctified? Can a state be kodesh? Or no, only the Torah is kodesh, only the mikdash is kodesh. Everything else, no, just leave that to other people. That's not us. Or Nehemiah coming and saying, no, the walls of Yerushalayim are kodesh.
A state can be kodesh when it's not run by Kofrim, when it's run by Mashiach.
It can be.
No, I'm sorry. It's 75%.
I'm not.
Let's not be afraid to say
But
it.
if you read the Tanakh, you'll see that's not.
Eventually, they will be like that. But right now, I'm sorry. But in that case, it's not kodesh.
No, go read. Many times it says they're not Kodesh.
Only one.
No, but we'll talk later.
No, that's to say, Hirsch is saying a Tana that's very powerful. That's very. But the whole everything happening, Hirsch, came from Kofrim. In other words, the Hashem's ways are miraculous. This is the basic statement. I believe this is one of Rav Kook's basic statements, is that Me'et Hashem hayta zoti niflat be'enenu. This is from Hashem. It's greater than us. Just the same way when Chazal give the amazing statement, right? Reuven osek b'sako v'ta'anito, and Yaakov b'sako v'ta'anito, and they're all mourning. Yehuda, Yaakov, Yosef, everyone's mourning, and Hashem's preparing the light of Mashiach. Hashem works in weird ways. We're from Moav, a story of what's the word? Incest. Ruth is from Moav. Our story is weird. David and Tamar, Yehuda, and Peretz comes from Maseh Yehuda and Tamar.
No one comes from Kuti.
It's true.
I'm saying it's important. It's an important Indian.
Well,
Where do they come from?
well, Moab is pretty bad.
Yeah, but it was still.
It's pretty bad. It's a father and daughter having relations.
Yeah, but it was a proper conversion.
No, I understand later, but it came from the beginning of Moab is a father and a daughter having relations. That's where Moab comes from. It's pretty bad.
Moab and Ammon. That's where they both came from.
Right.
Yehuda and Tamar, I still have a very reasonable.
Well, that was for Kabbalah's Torah.
Understand.
It's true.
Understand.
It's still not what you wouldn't necessarily be so proud of.
There's nothing like that. It didn't happen. Nothing like that.
Oh, well, you have Shlomo coming from David and Bathsheba. There are interesting things that happen.
That wasn't. Yeah, but that's different.
Okay.
So one is not incest.
That's one day in Chazal. There are many other deot. You can't stay on that one. There's one day in Chazal that it's that it's a Kol Omer David Chatayinu. But there are many other deot in Chazal. Mostly in other cases where they say the pshat. I mean, David HaMelech said Chatati. It seems that it's very clear in his life. There's no way out of that. To say maybe it wasn't over the Isur Deoraita, but Hashem has his wives raped in front of everyone. He runs away. His son kills his other children. Life isn't good after what happens there, okay? It's not a minor infraction that happens there, no matter what. How are you going to explain? In other words, you have to explain that statement, Kol Omer David Lota, and it's brought in the context of other people, Kol Omer Chata. So that parshanut is not, in my mind, the major reading of the Irua. Yeah, Asher. Wait, Asher wanted to say?
No, regarding Yehuda and Tamar, I went through this Parsha Shavua when the story came up. I really had to read it 3-4 times. I didn't want to understand why, because when you read it, it's really not nice at first. But when you look down
it's really not nice at first.
Yeah, I don't want to say it in a very blunt way, but it's not nice. If a person who does not understand, when he look at it, it doesn't sound good at all. But when you look into Rassi's explanations and really understand it, it has a very spiritual and divinity, which we have to think out of the box. I'll just give a short explanation. When the first son married Tamar, it was strange. At that point of time, even at this present day, nobody think of such what he was thinking. Now it's an era of internet, mobile phone. You can watch any person can watch what's happening and what is good and what's not bad. And he's at that generation, and he's thinking in that way. So that means, and the starting point comes from the wife of Yehuda. When he says the wife of Yehuda, the name was not mentioned. Only the father name was mentioned. He say he was a stranger, and that means he's a non-Jew, or he can be a Canaanite because he says Canaanite. He can be a Canaanite or something. So from that itself, we can find they are not from a spiritual neshama of Am Israel. There cannot be Mashiach coming out of that blood. So for that reason, Hashem has to find a way to connect Yehuda and Tamar by any means. And that I see it from the translation of Rashi's, and it was like, wow, what we thought as which was not nice and which was not moral, but in fact, if we look at the history, the background about it, the fact is Hashem was doing the right thing.
Well, that's never a question. Hashem is always doing the right thing. Yeah. What I'm saying in this case, and what Hirsch was saying, that sometimes the right thing to us appears to be really, really the wrong thing. In other words, it
was wrong for until last person.
I'm just saying, Be'emet, it's Hashem has ways at work that sometimes we have to have the humility to say we don't understand. But on the other hand, we have to have the ability, humility as opposed to the ability to say, but this is Hashem's work, and we are going with it. This is the question with Medinat Israel. Are we going to say we don't understand and therefore we're taking ourselves out of this play? Or we say we don't understand how this is happening or why it's happening this way, but we see what's happening. And what's happening is Geula, is redemption. And we're going to join into this with as much as we can to try to affect it, to try to make it better, to try to make it more kadosh, to try to make it more correct. But it's vadai. This is redemption, and we're going with it. And I think this is Nehemiah's reading. From Nehemiah's reading is redemption, as he's coming back and being part of, is to take this kedusha of the mikdash and bring it out as much as we can. And this guy, Shmaya, his reading was to stop that. In other words, he's really, so again, whether he was hired or not hired, it doesn't matter for me at this point. I think in the spiritual vikuach that he has with Nehemiah is this. And Nehemiah answers him.
He was meditating and he still took the money.
And well, it could also be, but I think also Nehemiah says to him, Ha'ish kamoni ivrach. Someone like me will run away. We're in a different mindset, me and you. You run away to the Mikdash. I don't run away. It's a different mindset. You, when you're attacked, you go like this. I'm when attacked, I fight back. It's just a different motion. I think you go back and you think you'll be protected with Hashem. And I say Hashem will protect me as I go forth. It's mamash a machloket on how would he work in the world? How much can you believe in Hashem and go forth into the world? Or how much you say, the world is impure, right? Atzur, right? He's holding back. We said, this is one of the readings we said, right? So that he won't have any temptations. Because he doesn't know how to deal with temptations. He doesn't know how to deal with the world. He goes into the Mikdash and closes the doors. Nehemiah knows how to deal with the world. He has the bravery, the courage to go out, which is not easy, by the way.
Rab Teshua's question, like, can we say that Shemaiah wasn't necessarily, doesn't mean he's bad, he's Rasha.
In what
he
I'm
just has a complete different ideology.
That's what I'm...
Such thinks Nehemiah is wrong.
This is what I'm offering in this case.
So to take the money, he's not a bad guy, he just really disagrees with Nehemiah.
Well, he's a bad guy if he's trying to...
Because we know the answer, we know he's a bad guy. Because we know this...
I just wanted to give like a more in-depth, I think, explanation here. I'm not sure what I'm saying is completely soter the other things. I just think that the spiritual idea coming out here is really important. In other words, Shmaya, in this sense, as the Ramat Valley said, he was a great man. He was really a great man. He went to meet a great man. And he is a great man. He's a great Talmid Chacham. He may be even a prophet. but his worldview of how redemption is supposed to work is directly opposed to Nehemiah's worldview of how it is. And therefore, he's not willing to play around with him. It doesn't say, Derech Agav, doesn't kill him, he doesn't do anything to him, if you realize to the end, right? It doesn't say, and then I shot him, I put him in jail, I don't know what. I mean, that's it. It just ends with his argument. He says, no, Hashem didn't send you. And that's also a deep statement, right? Lo Elohim shelacho. He says, this is not, people who are godly inspired have no fear. It's a very important part. Rav Kook says this hundreds of times. That he says, there's no fear. When someone believes in Hashem, there's no fear. The more you believe in Hashem, Rav Kook himself is the person who did this, right? Who was out everywhere, said what had to be said in front of the High Commissioner, the British High Commissioner, and the Chilonim in the Tzafon, and the Charedim here. No fear. He who really, really, really is divinely inspired, he doesn't move like him. Ha'ish asher kamoni yivrach. Someone like me will run away. It doesn't work that way. So I hope this gives us a better understanding of this vikuach, and I think it's very important in understanding the talich that's happening here, the process that's happening here, which I think comes into our process too. In other words, here in Eretz Yisrael right now, the need to be brave exists. We have to not be afraid. We have to go out. Now it's hard and it's frightening. A lot of times you'll deal with things. I'm not talking about little things, like dealing with modern conceptions and thought and modernity, and anti-nationalism and all kinds of things that we're dealing with. You have to be connected to Hashem and going out. You can't. The danger, of course, is always to start believing your own ideology and turning the ideology into God. That is a super danger for everyone. When you have an ideology and then you close the ideology and that's it. Now I have God in my box and I know exactly what to do in every situation. Danger. Real people who are in this are always attuned to what Hashem. What does Nehemiah say again and again? What God put in my heart. Remember his terms? Ve'Elohim asher sam bilibi, natan bilibi. This is the real religious brave person. The real religious man knows that he knows what he should be doing, but is always attuned to what Hashem wants from me now. How do you read this? How do you trust yourself? Levai, halevai. We need a Nehemiah. But like these are those people.
Flowing, just go with wherever
it is, but you have to be careful that you're going with Hashem and not going with whatever you want to go with. And how do you what? And there's no answer to that besides you have to do the truth. And the Sofosha Davar, I believe that the truth will come out. It could take a year, it could take 50 years, it could take 400 years, right? It takes us a long time to different things. I agree. Yes.
So do not turn your own personal ideology into God, because it's very dangerous. Because
what?
Because ideology is man-made. Ideology is man-made. It's divinely inspired, but you have to be always open. You have to be open to the divine will. Just like
because it goes against the divine will.
It could go against the divine will. It doesn't necessarily go against the divine will. It may be the divine will. But when you close ideology and don't allow the spirit of Hashem to infuse you, then you're really living your limitations, your own limitations. It's a danger. It's a real danger. We'll hint about this in Megillat Esther, about the danger of man forming his own mind worldview and leaving it there and not being open to divine. It's really the problem of Avodah Zarah. That's the evil of Avodah Zarah. But we'll talk about that one in Megillat Esther. Tov, let's go on. We were stuck here for a while. We have to finish up the thing. Okay. So first of all, the next pasuk, we suddenly meet the next in pasuk Yud Gimel. Sorry, not Yud Gimel. Yud Daled. Remember God, right again, he's talking to Hashem. Zachra Elohai, please remember Hashem, Tovian, Sanvelat, all that they did, and also Noadiah HaNeviah. Suddenly we hear another person, possibly a female, Noadiah HaNeviah, a lady prophet, Uleyeter HaNeviim, and the other prophets who were all scaring me. Okay? So the Ibn Ezra says Noadiah HaNeviah, he says it's just another name for Shmaya. And the reason...
Why are we calling him a woman now?
We're calling him Noadiah Shamar Nivaed El Beit Elohim. Right? Remember, he said to them, "Let us go meet in Beit Hashem." That Noed. So he says now Noadiah. They call him from, I don't know if it's derogatory or they just connect what he said in the future to his name. But others say straight out Noad Ki Noadiah Ita Isha. Sedel. V'lemor ki Noadiah Ita Isha. Itnaba alav sheker, and that makes sense. That's the pshat. There are different perushim. Who exactly Noadiah is? Whatever it is. Apparently, Shmaya wasn't the only one doing this to Nehemiah in the thing, and apparently, when you think about it, Sanvelat and others put out a lot of money to convince as many people as possible that he wants to be king, and then they could bring that to the Persian king and blame him. Tov, quickly. Pasuk 15, Pasuk Tetvav, right? The wall was finished on the 25th of Elul on 52 days. So first of all, 52 days when you go back from Rosh Chodesh Elul, comes out, I'll save you guys the math, it comes out Daled Av, the fourth day of Av, which means when Nehemiah returned to Yerushalayim, he returned on Aleph Av, the first day of Av, right? Because he has these 3 days. That first, right, he looks around, and then they start building on Dalet. So that's when it's the same day that Ezra came. Ezra also arrived at Yerushalayim Ezra arrived in Yerushalayim on the first of Av. We said when Ezra returned the first of Av, it was to rebuild coming back on Av, where Tisha B'Av, right? That's the month of destruction. They came back to rebuilding it. Ezra didn't build the Mikdash, remember? I yell about this all the time. I see this written all over the place in very learned things. Ezra built Beit HaMikdash Hasheni. I'm like, Ezra didn't build Beit HaMikdash. But he also returned to bring the next stage of redemption. And Nehemiah is also coming back in Av to bring the redemption. But he finishes in Kafhei Elul. Kafhei Elul is the day of Briat HaOlam. Hey, Aleph Elul, Aleph Tishrei, Aleph Tishrei is when man was created. According to there's a machloket in the Gemara, but according to one of the opinions, the world was created on Kafhei Elul. The man was created on Rosh Hashanah, not the world. Man was created on Rosh Hashanah. And in this sense, Nehemiah was times are very important to him. Okay, just like everyone, all the dates we've seen throughout here seem to be very important. This was a date that was important for him to finish the wall by then. Possibly he was pushing them to finish it at this date. In his sense, the building of Yerushalayim is like the creation of the world. We are now making a new world. We are using the connection to Hashem to create a state in this sense, to create something here that is like a new world. Okay, I'm not going to go into this too much because I want to continue and finish this up so we can get to Megillat Esther with a clear head. All our enemies, but 52 days is very quick to build the walls of Yerushalayim. Okay, it's amazing, right? It's very good. And we see that it affects the people also, and our enemies heard and they were scared. Veiplu me'od b'einehem. They fell in their own eyes, and they knew that it was from God that this was done. And apparently it was. This was such a huge project that was...
The difference between now and then is literally everyone in the city is building. Now we have allocated workers who smoke cigarettes all day instead of working.
I hear you, but still, it's pretty... pretty impressive.
Of course it's impressive.
Pretty impressive. And Nehemiah...
What you could do with everyone in the state was
it's true. It's true.
Hiring people to smoke cigarettes.
I agree that there's definitely a yitaron. something great when everyone does something together, and it's your own that you're working, right? You build their houses, but it's important that he says it was clear that Hashem's hand is in this, and it was clear to them, to our enemies also, that this would not have worked without some divine help. And then he just finishes up 3 psukim, and I want to just go through quickly because I want to see the beginning of chapter 7. גם בימים ההם מרבים חורי יהודה איגרותיהם הולכות אל טוביה, ואשר לטוביו באות אליהם. Suddenly, be with me here, you guys should look at the English as I read the Hebrew. There are letters being sent between people who live in Israel, in Yerushalayim, and to Tovia, who's one of the 3 bad guys. כי רבים ביהודה בעלי שבועה לו. A lot of the people who live in Yehuda are how do you translate that? But pledge their allegiance to him, because he's the chatan, he is the father-in-law of Shchania ben Arach, who apparently is an important person. And also Yochanan bno lakach et bat Meshulam ben Berechia. This guy Tuvia's son Yochanan took one of the daughters of the nobles, and there is a mix up here. Tuvia, Rashi says Tuvia was a Yisrael Rasha Haya. Look at in verse, you can't say it, in verse 17, Rashi says Tuvia Yisrael Rasha. Just so we know, Sanvelat, Tuvia, Geshem. Geshem is Aravi. Sanvelat is a Shomroni. Tuvia is Jewish. He's an Eved Ammoni, we called him, right? He's the slave of Ammon, but this guy is a Jewish guy. He's not happy. In other words, unfortunately, we know that Jews in high places often are not really with us all the way, right? I mean, if certain Democratic candidates would have been presidents, not necessarily greatest for Israel, not necessarily. We don't know, maybe, right? But right. כי רבים ביהודה בעלי שבועה לו כי הוא חתן, גם טובותיו היו אומרים לפניי. People would come to him and say, what's wrong with you? Tuvia's a good guy, he's a Jew, he's a great guy. ודבריי מוצאים לו איגרות, and they would say what I'm saying, they said to him. In other words, Nehemiah is saying the Matzav in Yerushalayim was still not there. The people in Yerushalayim were not convinced that Nehemiah is the leader, that Nehemiah's way is the right way, that Nehemiah's tekifut, his tekifut, takif is his strength, his power is the right way to go. His individualism, to not have anyone involved, to not include other people, to always be antagonistic with the people around him. That was not necessarily what they want. Just lighten up a bit, connect to the people. You have to know. Nehemiah was very, very. He knew what he was doing, and he didn't want it. So let's. I just want to really read the first. The first 5 psukim of chapter 7. Let's read this quickly, okay? Go ahead. Who's reading us the first 5 psukim? And that's where we're gonna end here. Yeah.
It happened after the wall was built, and I had erected its doors.
There are the doors.
The keepers and the singers and the other Levites were designated. I then appointed Hanani, my brother, and Hananiah, officer of the palace, over Jerusalem. For Hananiah was a man of truth, and had long been God-fearing. I said to them, let the gates of Yerushalayim not be opened until the heat of the day, and while they are standing, let them stay shut. And while they are standing there, let them shut the doors and secure them. Also establish watches by the inhabitants of Yerushalayim, each man at his watch, and each man opposite his home. For the city had wide open spaces and was large, but there were few people in it, and houses had not been built. Then my God inspired me, and I assembled the aristocrats and the nobles and the people to trace their lineage. I found the book of lineage of those who had ascended at first, and found written in it.
Stop here. And this is the end. This is the last we're going to see of Nehemiah for a long time. Okay, I'm gonna just remember this. It ends. We're gonna start at the end, and I'll go back a little bit. It ends with Nehemiah's next great project. This project is.
Those house and houses.
Well, not only have houses, let us populate the city. The city didn't have a lot of people living there. Mamash temale. That's what we want. The city. The city is empty. No, Ariel's right. The city is empty. You know, you have to see. They built the walls, but people don't live there.
Yeah.
Now there's a problem. In other words, we have a great city, but no one lives here. He's going to have to figure out how he brings people into the city to live there. That's going to be his great project that we're going to see later. But just the end here. First of all, he builds the doors, right? Remember in the beginning of chapter 6, he said, and the doors were not yet put in. Now the doors are put in, okay? He puts in. And who does he put in charge of the walls? The doors and the walls?
Brother.
No.
Well, and it says, Hanani, my brother.
1 second.
Hananiah.
Before that, in verse 1, in Pesach Aleph.
After the wall was built and I had erected its doors, that the gatekeepers and the singers and the other Levites were designated. Puts Levim.
Puts Levim. Do you guys remember what we said about the Mikdash spreading out to the city? You know what the job of the Levim is? It's to guard the Mikdash. Nehemiah takes them and brings them out to guard the walls of the city. And you could have you just listen. You hear the Levim saying, no, our job, we're in the Mikdash. And Nehemiah says, no. You have to spread out from the Mikdash to the city. The city is sanctified. Yerushalayim is more than just the Mikdash. The Mikdash is the heart, but Yerushalayim is the body. It's important. Your job is greater than just to stay in the Mikdash. Your job as Levim, as a Levim Kedoshim, is to also be in charge of the walls of the city. This is his grand plan. This is Nehemiah's view. Bringing the prophets out. In a sense, it's supposed to go out to all of Eretz Yisrael. In that sense, it really is the continuation. Nehemiah is the first leg of this. We may see at the very end of Nehemiah, how he goes even further out. But now he's trying to make Yerushalayim this heart, at least bring it out to Yerushalayim. And then he brings Hanani and Hananiah, who are his either brother or brethren. And it's just an interesting term, I think. You read in English, Ish emet, he's a true man, and fears God for many a days, right? That's what you read it?
And he had
long been God-fearing. So look at the word, Vayaret Elohim merabim. He is fearful of God, merabim, from plenty, from a lot. So your translation was, for a long time. That's what Rashi says, mi'amim rabim.
No, he's got a lot of fear for God.
The Malbim says, he was willing to be fear of God even in front of the multitudes. Me'rabim. In front of the multitudes. That's when the Malbim reads it. Let me just read it to you guys. He says it's a beautiful perush.
People like that in this story.
1 second, I'm sorry. וכמו שאמרו, הלוואי ימור השמיים עליכם כמורא בשר ודם. רוב האנשים, most people, will be fearful of the multitudes to do something against their will, against the multitude's will. Even if it's godly, even if it's from God. And here he needed someone who would not be afraid of any man. Even because all the aristocrats are in connection with Tuvia. Right? Therefore, he chose Hanani, who is not afraid of them. So it's just a wonderful perush, and it fits Nehemiah's personality also. He's looking for people who do the right thing, and they're not afraid. They're not afraid of people. They're not afraid of the multitudes. They're not afraid of Tuvia. They will do what's right in this situation. That's it. That's his group, Nehemiah's group of people. We have to end here, and we're not going back here. So I'm just going to say this idea of what they do with the walls and the doors. There's a very interesting instructions here in verse 3. what they did with the walls. They were open, they were closed. The Malbim explains there were double walls. There was like a greater outer wall that would open, a greater outer door, that would open up large and then many, many people come in. And then there was the little door inside that they could open, close, and open like a little crack so only one person could come in at a time. This is what he says. He says, Nehemiah's plan in Yerushalayim, they're still not safe enough. Because what they just said about Tuvia coming in and out, and their letters coming in, and then Nehemiah feels, I still have to hold on to Yerushalayim and make sure we don't open up the doors legamre. We have to be very careful who comes in and out. And therefore this little door, there you could see every single individual. It's like a checkpoint, right, in Yerushalayim. You see every single car who comes in. You're not opening up the gate and say, yalla, everyone can come in. There's a little door that opens up, and then I could see. And also, what it says here is they would close the gates. They would open the gates an hour after sunrise and close it an hour before sunset. Now,
Common practice at the time.
was it common practice at the time?
For security purposes.
Exactly. That's what it was. It's for security. You don't want to do it at night. You don't want to open things where it's not clear exactly sun, not sun, you can't make out. Nehemiah needs, I need to be 100% clear who's coming in, who's out. Yerushalayim is not done yet. The battle has not been won yet, even though now the gates are closed and we're not going to see the enemies anymore in the way we've seen them until now. Yes, Asher.
Isn't that every in Jerusalem, the wall city, in every gate there has to be a Beit Din.
A Beit Din.
Yeah.
In every gate, you have to have it in the gate.
Yeah, in the gate.
In a gate.
There's two gates, so in both the gates there should be a Beit Din, right? So.
Well, Yerushalayim has more than two gates. Yerushalayim has many gates. We met
exactly.
them.
So I'm just remembering of the time when the Yehoshua became a leader and bringing in the Israel inside the Eretz Canaan, and after dividing all the places, he said in every city there should be a Beit Din, because that's the like any other nations, they have a Beit Din separately, but Israel should have a Beit Din at the gate, not separately.
So I don't know where we would put them in here in this sense. There is a Beit Din, we said, has to be in Yerushalayim, right? We talked about this last time, the Lishkat HaGazit.
Put that here with the gate.
So I don't know.
So
I don't know.
Say the small gate, it's possible that there's a Beit Din, making sure.
I didn't see anyone say anything about this. It's not Mina. It's not. But when it says Shar Ha'ir, it means usually the Beit Din. It does mean the Beit Din. Often in Tanakh, when you see Mordechai is there, even though it may also be government. Mordechai Yoshev B'Shar HaMelech, he's going to be there in the government.
The boy who disrespects his parents, who drinks a lot,
Right.
Ben Sorel More. And the Beit Din was at the gate.
Okay, it says it often in the Torah.
Yeah.
Right, it's correct. Okay.
The end of Vav reminds me, confirm. It reminds me where we of course hear that the Jews did not follow. They said they want to go